Welcome to the Creative Marketing Show. I am your host, Rosh Sillars, and I am looking forward to this show because we have a lot of interesting topics to share. Our main topic, of course, is going live. Longtail marketing. I'm going live. We are live again every Monday, Eastern Standard Time, and we're talking about the long-tail marketing strategy. And so kind of getting all my pieces ducks in a row here so I can share some interesting information, including some news that I want to share with you. And then, of course, the last part of this three-part session is, well, it's your questions. And you have some good ones this week, so I'm looking forward to sharing that. But, the long tail concept has been around for quite a while. It's actually a long time statistical basically concept from many, many decades ago, but it became much more, more popular in the 2000s. Chris Anderson, who is the managing editor of Wired magazine, he had a story, an article on the long tail. And it became very popular, and he started speaking about it. And eventually he wrote a book of the same name, The Long Tail. And I'm going to talk about what that is about and how you can apply this to your marketing strategy. We've heard the term bounced around quite a bit. It's used in many different areas in different ways. And honestly, when you say long tail and what they're talking about, we'll get into exactly what they mean, but it's applied in so many different ways. It really takes away from its original meaning. But when it comes to marketing, it really doesn't matter. We have a basic concept that we need to understand. And so that's what we're going to go with. Let's just get into what this channel is all about. So this is a live YouTube stream. This is my podcast over at roshsillars.com. And you can catch me live and ask questions every Monday, noon Eastern Standard Time. And, here we talk and we believe the combination code and discovering what is your combination of tactics and strategies to help you grow the business you want to grow. The business that is in your heart, honestly. For many of us, there are many of us in this community who are photographers, but some are writers and some are designers and some are entrepreneurs with unique business ideas that you're trying to get off the ground or have gotten off the ground, but everything has changed on you and now you need to start again or continuously improve, which is the best way to go about it. That's certainly the way I've done it. Just continuously educate myself on new concepts. And ultimately, you want to prove those combination skeptics wrong, the people who don't believe in your combination. And that's probably a lot of times what keeps me going, just to show that we can do it. And there's so many ways we can approach this. So I'm always looking for your questions. I'm always looking for topics that you think would be very helpful to you. Whether you're listening to the podcast on Stitcher Radio or SoundCloud or iTunes, or you're watching this on YouTube, wherever you're finding me, there's an opportunity to ask a question in the comments. And that's what helps to keep this show going. And of course, over at Twitter, at Rosh Sillars. Okay, so back to the long tail, and let's really get into this. The long tail is basically, it's the idea that low volume, in other words, something that's not as popular. So you have the popular items. Let's use let's use his original concept that I used to quote in my talks many years ago, and that was talking about Amazon.com. It's a great example of the long tail. So Amazon.com is eating everyone's lunch. And let's just talk books for the moment, because that's how they started. And Amazon was basically a just an online bookstore, but with a vision. And the idea, let's think about it this way. If there's a big time best-selling book, okay, and a bricks and mortar store has it, that's great. They probably should. And let's say Amazon has it too. And let's say, sake of argument, that bookstore chain sells $50,000 worth of that book. Now let's suggest that Amazon does the same. They sell $50,000 of that book. Now they have a number of hot sellers in the store, but the problem with the bricks and mortar is that there's a limited amount of space. You can only fit so many books in that bookstore. Well, online, you have an unlimited amount of space. And that's, of course, why Amazon is continuously adding products and why we can get just about anything there. But what they built the company on is the long tail. So that hot seller is the head of the tail, the thing that is popular. And then along the way, they sell $50,000 of that big one, but all these little things, ones and twos. For example, my dad wrote a book many, many years ago, 1987, I think, 86, on weather. I can find that on Amazon.com. I could never find that in the bookstore. There's a time you could find my books in the bookstore, but I can't find them there now. But I can certainly find them on Amazon.com. And that's because every day they sell these not so popular anymore books or technically out of print books or whatever it may be. They can sell everything. So they may make $50,000 on that big item, but they also make $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 and more, of course, on all the smaller items. So the long tail is the idea that you can do your marketing and not necessarily jump in at the big dogs. You can work your way up to that by going on the fringes and looking for the longer tail items to sell but here's the deal. It's a volume in terms of smaller items. So you need the capacity. But at the same time, when we talk about search engine optimization, so let's get into the digital side of things. We talk about a long tail keywords. And that's where we can get into our content development with the long tail and developing our digital marketing with the long tail. So let's say, for example, you say photographer. That's the head of a tail. It's a popular keyword search. And let's say you go to, say, food photographer. So the title of your webpage, for one, is photographer first. And you're trying to get it ranked. It's going to be tough to rank number one for photographer, right? But it might be a little bit easier depending on your authority in the business and how long you've been in the business and how many people link to your website, that maybe you could rank for food photographer. However, it might be easier for you to rank if you're in Cincinnati food photographer. Still relevant to you and probably even more relevant to you, right? So that's a longer tail keyword than just photographer. It's not Googled as much, but it's probably relevant enough for you, and you can probably get enough business out of it. And then you could do let's say, Cincinnati food photographer with studio. That's an even longer tail. And so that could be even easier to rank number one for. And what you would do, you wouldn't just, in the case of photographer, if you ranked for photographer, I'm sure you'd be plenty busy. But maybe just ranking for the Cincinnati food photographer with studio wouldn't be enough. So maybe you need to be Cincinnati portrait photographer with studio, or Cincinnati interior photographer. And in other words, you have multiple pages that you're ranking for. So you don't have to rank number one for photographer or even Cincinnati photographer. But if you can rank for 3 or 4 or 5 or even 6 or more longer tail keywords, it could drive about the same amount of traffic as just one solid head of the tail keyword. So when dealing with blogging, that's another thing you should consider. That's something that we're considering in terms of trying to get ourselves ranked and get ourselves noticed. We look for the longer tail keywords that maybe people are not using in a podcast, on YouTube. And by the way, I have a really great question about YouTube coming up from one of you. So I want to get into that in a few obviously right after the news. But I'm looking forward to sharing some really good insight of some of the things that I'm doing. Okay, so continuing on with the long tail marketing strategy conversation. So with blogging, one of the tools I like to use are Keywords Everywhere and Answer the Public. The combination of those two tools allows me to find topics that I can write about or do a YouTube video about or a podcast about, and allows me to find the longer tail stuff based on my authority. As your authority improves over time, and what is your authority? Well, you're going to find that there's authority, all these algorithms, whether it's Instagram, whether it's YouTube, or being found as a blog on, thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. Whether you find yourself blogging, the fact is the algorithms are going to give you a boost based on your authority. And so we develop authority by becoming really a larger channel, whether again it's in if it's in Facebook or it's in Instagram, whatever it may be, that authority is going to build. So it's going to make it easier for us to rank for those shorter tail keywords. And sometimes you think, wow, that's kind of rude and disadvantage to people who have smaller channels, with smaller blogs. And it's what you have to work your way up to. So you start off with those longer tail keywords, build your authority with those. And as you start to build your authority, you can start going shorter and shorter and shorter in terms of your keywords and keep building on that. So you don't always have to do long tail keywords. But, let's say, for example, you do something on YouTube, okay? And let's say you have a longer tail keyword. In say, you have so many subscribers, you have so much authority within YouTube, and, just by putting it out there, you're going to get to number 12. But down the road, you just put something out there, those keywords, you're automatically in the top 5. And so you start to realize, oh, I should really try to push myself a little bit more. And so we continuously try to push what we're trying to do. We continuously try to improve our strategy and work our way up the keyword in the long tail and make our shorter tail continuously, better. Sorry, kind of fumbling there. All right, so it doesn't matter what you're doing, but the thing is, you need to recognize where you are, maybe in the authority scale, and that just comes from testing. Just see where you are in your authority scale, in your blog, in your podcast, wherever you are, and then continuously to push yourself. Okay, so those are some of the basics. The idea is the notion we're looking at the notion of the long tail as a market. I mean, the whole idea is that there is a market out there for you in the long tail. And one of the things that people like to say, from niches to riches, it's the idea that you find some really good niches, you can make some good money. There are enough people looking for what you have to offer in these various niches. And whatever you are doing as a creative, as a professional, it doesn't matter. If you can find the right niches, you can make some serious money. And this is one way also to help you stand out from the crowd. If you're just trying to be like everyone else and doing exactly what everyone else is doing, it's harder to separate yourself from the competition. So when you can find that longer tail niche where there really is still, nobody is focusing on it. Nobody's the expert on that type of photography or that type of writing or this product that you have discovered. If you have not, there may be a demand for it, but nobody has really cornered the market. Maybe it's part of what they do, but they're not the expert at it. And I guess that's quite often what I'm suggesting when you're trying to develop your business as a long tail marketing strategy and a long tail business in many ways. Okay, got through that. Boy, it's kind of felt like I was a little jumbled up there. I'm trying to make this whole thing a little bit easier because I have my podcast audience, I have the live audience. I'm trying to make this all work out I'm trying to keep it as smooth as possible. And in keeping, one thing I did is I printed out, and you may hear some paper moving around. That's because I printed everything out because I was getting a little confused going from screen to screen because I use my laptop to record these on YouTube. And so I could use OBS, but I really do like using the simplicity of the YouTube system that you just push a button and go. That's kind of nice. Okay, so let's get into a couple new things that have come about. One thing we should definitely make note of is in just a few days is May 25th, and that is GDPR. Now, I have a video on this, but if you don't know what that is, those are the new regulations in the European Union. And we have talked about this on past shows, but I do have a video on it. And there's some things you really need to understand whether you're in the European Eurozone or you're outside of it. If somebody here's some basic information that will be helpful. If someone seeks you out and fills your list, like fills out a form for your email list, and they're from the Eurozone, you don't have to worry about it so much. But if you're advertising to people within the Eurozone, you do need to worry, and you do need to be compliant. So those are some of the things. So don't worry, you're not going to accidentally be in trouble unless you are actually targeting people within the Eurozone. If people are finding you, then fine. But you know what? You're seeing a lot of companies updating their terms of service, and you may just want to update your terms of service. You can't, and a big part of it is not making people automatically opted in. Have people decide whether they want to opt in or not, and develop a lot of transparency in what you're doing and share that transparency with your audience. And you'll probably comply with most of GDPR just with that. Okay, so there's something new on Instagram. They've rolled out or rolling out an update for users to post from their Instagram feed into their stories. Something new. So I think that's pretty cool. That's a next step. I was reading a couple articles where they're talking about, hey, there's something new in Instagram stories, and then steal it from Snapchat. I thought that was kind of funny, but it's actually kind of true. Okay, something you're also going to find, and this is something on YouTube as well as Instagram, kind of just curbing our habits. I'm not sure why they're doing this, because their goal is to keep us on, but I guess they want to keep us healthy too. And there are some timers and alarms. Now, I know YouTube, you have to opt in for this as it's being rolled out. It'll give you an alarm saying, hey, you may have been on YouTube a little too long. And the Instagram will tell you how much time you've been on Instagram. In other words, I guess our social media is trying to be socially responsible and think of our health and our time and our lives. So, hey, that's great. I think that's pretty cool. I'm not sure how many people will use it, how many people will pay attention to it, but at least it's a step. It's a step in the right direction, because sometimes we do get lost in Instagram. Sometimes we do get lost in YouTube and Facebook. And next thing we know, it's 2 hours later and we haven't gotten done what we need to be getting done. Okay, on to our questions. And those of you who have questions in the chat, please put them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them after I go through these questions. And those of you who wish to ask questions, you can put them in the comments below, of course, and you can always meet me here live on Mondays, noon Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes there are a few people in here with me. Sometimes I'm all alone. So it's a great opportunity for even a little one-on-one coaching. Sometimes I can give you a little feedback if that is what you're looking for. If you have some ideas, if a tactic or strategy might or might not work, how I might approach something, that is a good time, good opportunity for you. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, I have four questions. Okay, should I test Instagram ads for a month? That is the question. So I would say probably no. I would recommend that you. I would recommend that you take a longer view than just a month. You need to have a plan. You need to test Instagram. Now you can do the Instagram ads through the Facebook platform. And I think you need to at least look at maybe 3 to 6 months. So what I will often say to people is make sure that you have, one, the budget to do this over the long term. Because a lot of times people say, let me try ads for, maybe try $100 worth of ads and see if it works. Hey, sometimes it does work. but generally it does not work. And it depends on what it is that you're doing. Instagram, as well as Facebook ads, especially, I like to use them for more of a just kind of getting people to a page to sign up for an event or something going on down the road so I can market to them later. I don't want to necessarily market to people directly on Facebook. So that's what I find, usually a download or something like that. That's what I like to use Facebook for. And then down the road, I can market to them via email or retargeting. And the same thing really for Instagram. A lot of times people don't like to be sold directly, but you can certainly get the information out there, because if you have a really exciting, cool product, Instagram could be a really neat place to share that product, especially if it's highly visual. So it's something to consider, but you need to have more of a strategy. So if you want my answer, if you said, should I just try Instagram ads for a month? Look, if you're saying, well, I have $100,000, let me try it. Well, maybe you'd have enough data to really test things day by day. And that might work. But most times when people ask that question, it's because they don't have a lot of money to spend. And so I would say no. Wait till you have that cash available to really do it right. Use other social media right now to help get the word out about what you're trying to do, to use your time rather than money. So we quite often have time or money, and it sounds like in this situation you probably have more time. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, that's my assumption, but that's quite often the case. So if you don't have the money, you should probably make the time and put a strategy together. And then at what point are you ready to start doing Instagram ads? And probably making sure you have at least at minimum $500 a month to do Instagram ads, and then hopefully can build from there. But say 500 a month for 3 to 6 months, and then build off of that. So that's my recommendation. Obviously, depends on the product or service, depends on the price points, how much of a profit margin you have. There are a lot of factors to start playing in there to figure out that ROI. Okay, this is the question I mentioned before that I thought was really, really helpful. I think will be helpful for many of you, especially those of you who are on YouTube. Okay, should I recreate my YouTube thumbnails? And I'm going to say yes, but let me give you when and how and why. And I probably should do a whole entire video on this topic, because this is really some good stuff that I have been doing. Now, as you know, I have like 650 plus videos that are public. I have more than that here on the YouTube channel, but I have 650 plus. This is my 405th podcast too. Wow, we're getting up there on everything. But anyway, over 650 YouTube videos. Now, not all of those videos can be saved, to be quite honest. Some of them are good, and some of them are horrible. Some of them are worthy of being saved, and some are not. So how do you know? Well, what you do is you go into your YouTube analytics and you look under retention. There's absolute retention, and then there's relative retention. So if you go back and say maybe you have some videos from 6 months ago, look and say if they're over 50% retention in general, great. Then start to look at the relative retention. Or what I will do is I will look at videos. Let's say there's a certain threshold. Most of my videos get so many views, and then they just stop on average. Well, you can see, okay, there's some that get twice the number of normal views. Well, they probably have a higher retention because YouTube is still showing those videos. And so what you can do is look at the relative retention. And if it's high across most of that video, relative retention is high across most of the video, it might be worthy of redoing the thumbnail, especially if it's a poor design or an old design. A lot of mine are old designs and just did not get clicked. They're still shown because when they are watched, people watch them. But the problem is nobody's clicking them. And so what I do is I improve the chances of being clicked with a better thumbnail, or sometimes in some cases a headline, change things around. So when you do that combination, if you want a video to really go and continuously be shown and get a lot of views, you have to have a really good thumbnail to get their attention, a great headline, topic specific, and then they have to watch it well over 50% in most cases. Sometimes it's 40%, depends on how long that video is. A really long video, you can have a lower percentage, but in most cases, if you can get over 50%, you're probably in good shape. So again, that combination. But there are a lot of videos that I have that honestly, yes, they have 30, 40%, even some cases 50% retention. However, the relative retention is not high. And what the relative retention is basically compared, say, a 5-minute video compared to many other 5-minute videos. And if other 5-minute videos have a higher retention rate, then your video is not going to be shown no matter, how often it's clicked. So, or it's not going to do well. So that's what I recommend. So yes, you can and you should, but qualify it. Look for the videos specifically, especially if you have a lot of them that have a high relative retention. And if they do, yeah, redo the thumbnail and test it out, because now that we have all these new metrics with impressions and click-through rates, we definitely want to be over a 3% click-through rate. Now I have some that are 6, 8, 18% click-through rates. And yes, they're continuously shown by YouTube in those cases. Some of those have, thousands and tens of thousands of views. And so that is how that works. You just want to keep them, you want them to continuously be shown, and then your dead videos just die over time and are not shown very often. Okay, the next question. How do I start a podcast? That's a really good question. The best answer is just start. Just start testing, just like any of these things. How do you start a blog? How do you start a YouTube channel? How do you start podcasting? Just start. But when it comes to podcasting, definitely a good video. Audio is obviously very important, but it's really very important with video too. I would rather have better audio than video in most cases when it comes to YouTube. But as far as the podcast, there's a lot of free software online that will allow you to record. I've often used GarageBand. I'm using Audition out of Adobe to for a copy of this podcast. I wonder if I started that part up again. No, I didn't. So I will be using the audio from the YouTube. I have a what I've been doing is have been recording an Audition behind it, so I have a backup, and that's what I used in the last podcast. But the podcast before, I used the audio from the YouTube recording. Now, the reason between the two, so you can do this too. You can use other platforms such as Anchor. That's another one. But the reason I do that is because sometimes you'll get a situation where I'm talking and then it kind of cuts and it seems like I'm missed a few sentences there. Well, that's because there was an internet issue and that the YouTube kind of skipped somewhere or paused. I haven't seen any signs of problems, but it can happen in the middle of the podcast. So that's why that happens. And so I do the backup, which is not what I'm doing this week because I didn't push play. I did, but then I redid it, and then anyway, long story. So we just have the YouTube video, videos, audio. There we go. So you can use Anchor. You can use free software online. You can use your phone to record and create a audio file. And then from there, you can upload it to various services such as SoundCloud. That's what I've been doing. For years, I've been hand coding it, creating my own XML file, which I then give to Stitcher as well as Stitcher and iTunes and a whole host of different places out there through the years. Right now, though, since around 402, podcast 402 or show 402, I have been uploading to SoundCloud, which has been a lot easier, but I'm still hand coding these. I'm still hand coding all these things because I know there are a lot of legacy locations where people are hearing this podcast through the years. So I don't want to cut everyone off just because I went to a different section. You mean, been doing this 10 years, believe me, there are a lot of places that this podcast can be found. But the main thing is find a good microphone, find a good piece of software. If you like to edit, there are some nice editing pieces of software, which, I would go online and find the reviews for the platform you are using. So if you're using your phone, that's different than using your desktop or a PC or a Mac. But there are so many ways in which you can record now. You shouldn't have any problems at all. I would say, I've said Anchor twice. I think you might want to try Anchor as a good place, but there's Blog Talk Radio. I've had a few friends who have used that service. So there are a number of services out there. The main thing is just get out there. I would recommend that you start off with what we talked about with the long tail, find your niche, and then write out 10, 20, 50 ideas for shows, or even people you might want to interview. and take the risk. You'd be surprised how many people will actually say yes to be on your podcast. And hey, if you want to just test it out, send me an email, rosh@rosh.media, and have me be your first guest. You can use a number of systems. You can use zoom.us for interviews, or you could use your Skype. You can use Google. So there are a lot of ways you can go about creating good audio content. Okay, last question. Should I A/B test my forms? Yes, you should. In some cases, long forms are great. Some cases, short forms. Most of the time, short forms, but you never know until you test. You never know until you test. So, yes, A/B test and see the long form. I've seen more times than not that people getting just absolutely freaked out. I had a client that it seemed like it was 2 pages. The form was 2 pages and nobody was using it because they're totally scared off. They're bouncing right off the page as soon as they saw that monster. So yes, I am often of the belief that the short form is better because you're going to follow up with them. You're going to connect with them in most cases. So if that is the case, now, if it's a one-time deal, then yeah, you need to get all the information the first time. But if it's something where you're going to be interacting with the client back and forth, connecting, asking more questions, well, then yeah, just get their information, get them to contact you, and then go from there. So, hey, if you have a question, at Rosh Sillars on Twitter is the way to go, or you can catch me in the photography community at roshsillars.com. I have a few questions, a few things. Let me share a few of the most recent. Let's see here. Yep. So I did a few different articles. Oh, I did one 27 outrageous things photographers can do. I thought that was kind of fun. You can check that one out over at roshsillars.com. I also have a video on guerrilla marketing. I have one on, I also have, what else do I have? Oh, how I make money with less than 1,000 subs on YouTube. That was fun. And then nonprofit marketing. And then I've started on weekends. Just doing some basic stuff again. Some of my best videos have been videos in which I was just, how-to videos, quite honestly. And they have, many of them have thousands of views versus some of my strategy videos, which have much fewer. So I'm doing those on the weekends. And so if you see those pop up on the weekend, that's when I'm launching them, because during the week is my prime time where a lot of people are watching my videos for business and marketing. And so that's when I mostly share my strategy stuff. All right. Share the show with your friends because I'm sure they want to hear it too. We'll talk to you next time.